Hello, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our industry brief. We have a special edition today. My name is Lucia. I'm the Executive Director of Green Hospitality. I'm going to host the session for today. And it's my pleasure to welcome our speaker, Professor Kenneth Leung. I hope you don't mind if it's, I guess you're a doctor as well. Professor Kenneth Leung, who is a Chair Professor, Department of Chemistry and Director of State Key Laboratory of Marine Pollution at City University of Hong Kong. Today's topic will be about Seaspiracy, or related to Seaspiracy and to the marine ecosystem, and that's why we invited Dr. Leung, who is a specialist on this topic. He is a founding chief editor of Regional Studies in Marine Science and serves on the editorial boards of the Canadian Journal of Zoology and Marine Pollution Bulletin. In recognition of his contribution to marine ecology and environmental toxicology in the Asia-Pacific region, he was awarded the 19th Biwako Prize of Ecology by the Ecological Society of Japan and conferred as a Fellow of the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry in 2017. So we can really see that Professor Leung is a professional, and in 2018 he was selected as one of the top 100 Asian scientists by Asian Scientist magazine as well. He's currently serving as an expert member in various advisory committees, for instance, on the Council on the Environment, Advisory Council on Food and Environmental Hygiene, Lantau Conservation Fund Advisory Committee for the Government of Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. Hello, Dr. Leung. You are with us here. We cannot hear you right now. Dr.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, we were just checking whether you were still connected and your sound is okay.
I need to clear my screen.
We are also recording this session. We are happy to receive your questions. So if you have any questions for the related to this topic for the Professor Leung, please feel free to post it in the chat while we are on the presentation. It will be, unlike our happy hour talks, will be more technical. We'll run you through some data, some research, but hopefully you equally will enjoy such talk and such in-depth knowledge. But anything you're interested in, anything with regards to the marine ecosystems of Hong Kong or the topic trawling, please feel free to pose your questions and we will then answer them. I will give the liberty to to Professor Leung to either answer the questions as he goes, or if not, then we can also revisit them towards the end of the session. So with that, I will hand over to Professor Leung and his presentation.
Thank you, Lucy. So once again, thank you, Green Hospitality, for inviting me to share this presentation with you. Before I start my talk, let me introduce to you our State Key Laboratory of Marine Pollution. So we have three focal areas of research. First is an innovative technology for pollution monitoring and control. For example, we developed a device for real-time monitoring of pollutants like antibiotics. And also we focus on eco-safety and environmental risk assessment of chemical pollutants. So for example, we set up the food safety standards for certain chemicals. This is one of our flagship program as well. We also care about how ecosystem responds to marine pollution and how to mitigate them, and then how the ecosystem respond to those mitigation measures, including some measures for ecological restoration, like our recent project on eco-engineering of shoreline. So today, I will focus on two parts. First, I will talk about the impact of trawling ban in our waters in Hong Kong. And then secondly, I will share some of my opinions on the Seaspiracy, the recent documentary in Netflix. Okay, let's start. So I was told that almost half of the people didn't know what is trawling, what is the term of trawling. Trawling can be defined by a very simple diagram here. A vessel with a trawlet, and then it tows across the seabed. But most importantly, you can see that there is a train, is a metal train here. It's a heavy train. It will get down to the seabed. So when the boat tow, then this train will go deep down inside the sediment and then drag along the seabed. So then it will destroy all the benthic habitat, like this diagram before the trawling. After the trawling, you can see the effect is really devastating. So the trawlers can damage the seabed through this kind of action. At the same time, since the trawler or the net will not selectively collect the specimen, okay? That means it will catch everything, no matter what size or what species presence in the ecosystem. So in Hong Kong, we have another type of trawler. It's called stream trawler. Instead of using a metal train, it will use a metal bar, but serve the same purpose, to try to touch on the seabed sediment so that it can stir up the mud at the same time to make the and crab jump so that they will be caught by the net at the end. So if you look at these historical figures, the dark bar means 1970, 1980, and then the transparent one is 1990s. Then you can see the small fish actually increase in our harvest. And then at the same time, you can see the middle-sized fish and also the larger fish declining rapidly over time. So between 1979 and 2010, you can see a drop by 2/3 of our catch. Even though we have more modernized vessels, but the catch actually declining over time. In 2010, there were 400 bottom trawlers in Hong Kong waters. If all these trawlers come to work together on one day, it will catch 80% of all fishes in our harbor. Let's take a look how bad the situation was in around 2010. As you can see in this diagram, the fish harvest by a stream trawler, then you can see most of these fish are very tiny one. It's a webbie fish and also the pony fish. Most often, the fishermen actually catching more webfish than any creatures. So at that time, the government setting up a committee on sustainable fishery development. And then the committee actually recommend that the government should stop all these trawling activities from these 4 types of vessels, including the pair trawlers, stern trawlers, stream trawlers, and hand trawlers. Luckily, the legislation was passing through the Legislative Council and then being implemented on 31st December in 2012. So with this legislation, it hoped that the ecosystem can be recovered and also the associated fishery resources as well. So to my knowledge, it is a rare case for tropical region to carry out such a study to look at whether or not trawl ban is effective to revitalize the ecosystem, triggering the ecosystem recovery as well as facilitate the fishery resources to come back. So at that time, I applied for a funding. It is called Collaborative Research Fund of $7.3 million. I was lucky that to get this fund in 2013 so that I can carry out a very extensive study on this topic. So as a scientist, we always start with a hypothesis. What we were thinking, very simple. without the trawling activities, then we should see the recovery of the seabed from this desert to a very vibrant or with lots of different types of animals living on the seabed without disturbance. Then without this fishing pressure, we can see more sedimentary organic matter will be settled on the sediment. I will explain to you in minutes why we hypothesize that. With this change, we should see the benefit biodiversity means the animal living on the surface of the sediment and also inside the sediment will be increased. Especially for predator, sessile species, that means those species won't move like this sea pan, and also like oyster, and also filter feeder, because many filter feeders, they have a very low mobility. Then without disturbing the seabed, we should see this change, increase in predators, increase in sessile species, and filter feeder. Why there will be increase in predator? Because more food available to them, then they will come to feed on the smaller species. So let's take a look of the Electro Sedimentation process. If you remember, in the western side of Hong Kong, we have the Pearl River. It will discharge with fresh water. Inside the fresh water, there are many suspended particles. They are organic rich. That means important food for organisms in the sea. So in the electro process, you will see this suspended solid will settle down by gravity, and then eventually it will become part of the sediment. So after sedimentation, you will see the fine sediment, organic rich sediment will be on top of the sediment, okay? However, with these trawling activities, it stirs up the whole seabed. This is an aerial photo of those trawler. The white spot is the trawler vessel. And then whenever they work across the seabed, you can see they stir up the mud. That means the organic matter no longer stay in the seabed. They will go to the water column. The water column become very turbid with high level of suspended organic matter and suspended particles. So another study just reported early this year, they found that this kind of stirring up activity by the trawling actually can release carbon dioxide. The amount of carbon dioxide being released is equivalent to our air transportation in the world on annual basis. Then you can see the impact of trawling is very huge, not just to the environment and the fish, but also to global warming. Okay, now let's take a look at what have we done in this study. In 2001, AFCD, Agriculture Fishery Conservation Department, did a study to look at the benthic macroinfauna. That means those organisms live on the sediment and inside the sediment. Over Hong Kong, they collect over 100 samples from different places. And then by 2012, Environmental Protection Department gave us some money to repeat this study, but at that time, we just focused on 28 sites. As I said before, I obtained this $7.3 million from RGC. Then I tried to repeat the same study in 2012 summertime, then repeat this in 2015, so that we can compare whether or not the trawl ban actually can improve the marine ecosystem. So in each site, we collect 6 grab samples of sediment, and 5 samples were used for biodiversity analysis, and then 1 grab sample used it for the physical chemical analysis. For example, we studied the total organic matter in the sediment and the total nitrogen and so forth. So here is the sequence. What have we done? So we use this grab to collect the sediment. Then you can see the sediment on the tray here. This is called one sample. In each site, we collect 6 samples. And then for each sample being used for the biodiversity analysis, receive them, okay, with the 5 mm size sieve, and then we collect all the living organisms. They are mainly the polychaete worm and also small bivalves and also small crustaceans. And then you can imagine we have 5 grabs. There are many, many samples to sort into different family, and then we have to identify them. Especially for the worm, we have to take out the mouth part and then to check the mouth form so that we can identify the species level. If we cannot do it, we will use DNA analysis. So this tedious process will take years to complete. So let's take a look of the sediment physical chemical parameter first. We call it abiotic parameters. First one, we look at the suspended solid in the water column just above the seabed. Then the blue dot representing before the trawl ban 2012, and then the orange dot 2015 after 2.5 years after the ban. Then you can see most of the orange dot actually settle down at the bottom. That means after the trawl ban, we have less suspended solid in the water column. That is a very good sign. The average reduction was 25%. This is a really nice result, echo what we predict. And then at the same time, we look at the sediment total organic matter. You can see the orange bar much higher than the blue bar, except those very polluted area. But overall, statistically, we find that the organic matter on the sediment actually increased significantly by 29%. That really supporting our hypothesis that, well, without disturbance of the seabed, then we can see the Electro Sedimentation of organic matter on the surface. They provide food for many benthic organisms. So now let's take a look of the impact on the biodiversity. These are the examples of our local benthic organism like these crustacean amphipods, isopods, these bivalve, and also many gastropods, and also some of the sea urchin and also sea cucumber, plus these kind of polychaete worms. So when we look at the total abundance, you can see the orange bar always much higher than the blue bar. That means after the trawl ban, then we see threefold increases of the abundance of species in each samples, okay? At the same time, look at the C diagram here, the species richness. That means how many species per sample. Then we can see in most of the site, after the trawl ban, you can see the more species we can find in each samples. Then the number in terms of average increasing from 27.5 to 48.3, representing 1.8-fold increases. And we also not just looking at the species level, but also look at the functional group. That means the different group of organisms feeding on different things. Then we can classify them into functional groups. This parameter also increased from 11.6 to 14.8. And one thing very interesting we discover is that before the trawl ban in 2012, we can see due to the fermentation by the trawling activities, because many trawler, they like cutting a birthday cake to separate different zone, and then leading to more different community. So based on the species composition, we find during that time, we can find 9 different separated groups in the past. Then after the trawl ban, we find some of them united together. Then we only can find 6 groups after the trawl ban. Then most of these groups can be explained by the water current. then now we can see less fermentation due to the trawling activities. That is a very good news. Let's have a summary of what we have found in this study. The abundance, as I said before, increased from 250 to 850, about threefold increase. And then for the number of species, from 27 to 48, 1.8-fold increases. Then, as I said before, if the ecosystem improving, we should see more predator carnivores. Then the carnivores number jumped from 37 to 228, increased substantially, and then there were six-fold increase, okay? Then, as I said before, once we have more organic matter on the sediment surface, we will expect more depositor. That means those organisms feed on the sediment. They will extract the organic matter and small organisms from the sediment. The number of this group of species increased from 3 to 84, representing 25.5-fold changes. This is a really promising result we can see. Then for sessile species, those species cannot move like oyster, mussels, sea pan, and so forth. Then that number jumped from 7.6 to 22, representing almost threefold increase. So in conclusion, from this part of study, we can see the big change from fewer species, fewer number of species to be more abundant, and also the higher number of species in the system. So, and also more different groups of organisms. And then we can see, for example, more predators and then more depositors, as well as those organisms couldn't move. Because now without the trawling, they can stay there without disturbance, and then the population size increase. This representing the initial sign of recovery after the trawl ban. Now, we only focus on those live inside the sediment, okay? Now we proceed one step further. We want to ask whether or not this change will lead to improve of fishery resources. So without trawling, we should see lower fishing pressure, and also we can see the habitat changing from desert to something more heterogeneous, okay? Then we will expect both the biodiversity and fishery resources like fish, crustacean, crab and shrimps, mantis shrimps, and also mollusks like the clams and gastropods will increase altogether. Especially, we should expect the increase in predatory species, sessile species, and also the filter feeders. Then we also expect that once they have more food to eat, the overall trophic level will be increased, especially in the predator. Then this is a massive study involving 100 surveys in the field using a shrimp trawler with a scientific permit issued by AFCD, then including the solid work from 2 postdoc researchers and also 4 PhD students and also 1 MPhil students, plus 10 other research assistants. Once we collect the sample, we have to sort all the specimens on board. It's very labor-intensive work. Over this long period of time, we encounter over 300 species of fish and 200 species of crustacean and 146 species of mollusks. We have 6 permanent study area, 2 in the east, 2 in the south, and also 2 in the west. I was lucky that I collect monthly data between 2003 and 2005, and then another 2-month study in 2007, another 4-month study in 2012, all before the trawl ban. And then after I got the big grant from the government, then we start the study in the summer 2013, and then we did the monthly trawling surveys for this year, and then we repeat that between 2015 and 2016. So then the process is quite straightforward. We collect the sample from the transit, and then we sort the sample during the weighing, length measurement, and also identify the species in the laboratory. Since we have collected many data, so there will be over 200 slides to show to you. So it may require 3 hours. So I cut it short, only highlight some exciting results to show you here. For example, we study the Manta shrimp. These are the 4 common species we find in the Western waters in Hong Kong. Then over time, 2004, and then after trawling, then you can see consistently increase in the weight and also in the length, especially for the second species here, Yankee leaper. And you can see there were 88% increase of the individual weight and also 20% increase in their body length. Then you can imagine this animal live inside a burrow. They will have a borehole. They live inside there. Without disturbance, they can go happily, peacefully without disturbance. So this is a very good sign for the recovery. Similarly, we have done the work on this called Fathead Species. In Chinese, we call it yu. They are commonly used for making soup in families. So we also find that the biomass increased after the trawling as well as the trophic level as well. These are very good signs. So I try to summarize what we have found based on this long-term study. In the eastern water, we find improvement of the fishery resources and also crustacean resources, but we couldn't see any recovery for the mollusks, means the clams and the snail and the octopus and so forth. And then in the western part, the good news, we find overall fish, crustacean, mollusks all improving after the trawling. Sadly, we couldn't find any recovery in the southern water. And now I will explain to you why there were some odd results. For the eastern water, we focus on the Tolo channel and also the merge space, okay? As you can see in this figure, is a dissolved ocean in the bottom water. Then you can see every summer between June and September, there were deep of dissolved ocean. Below 2.8 means hypoxia. That means animals couldn't move, they may die due to suffocation. So you can imagine the fish and crustacean can detect the lowering of dissolved ocean. They can swim away, they can swim to shallow water, and then they can survive well. But not for mollusks because they cannot move too far away, or some of them cannot even move. Then during this low ocean period, they just die. Why there were periodical hypoxic event? This is linked to the eutrophication and also wet tide in Tolo Harbor and Tolo Channel. This is a long-term problems we have yet to resolve. Okay. Then how about the southern water? We didn't see any recovery. One observation was very interesting. In the early summer, like April, May, when we go out to sample, we will find a sea of this tiny urchin, sea urchin, just whole seabed full of this sea urchin for several months. They become bigger and bigger, and until the end, they don't have enough food to eat, they die. So in a healthy ecosystem, we should have a predator like this wasp. They will feed on this urchin. Since overfishing, we don't have many predators of this kind of urchin, then they prevail, they go really well in the community. Then you can imagine if the sea full of this urchin, then other organisms cannot use that area. That is one reason why we couldn't see full recovery in the southern water. And then the other things we also found in the evening, there are many fishing vessels in the area. They use the technique is called presening. That means they have big lead to circumference surround the whole water body, and then they would tie the lead and collect the fish inside. Before doing so, they will put the net to attract those fish to go inside to the lead before they catch them. So using satellite image, we were able to find that after the thaw ban, the light intensity increased dramatically for 2 years, 2013, 2013, and then 2015 and 16 returned to the pre-thaw ban status. That means after the thaw ban, there were more fish to fish, and then encouraging more fishermen to come out to fish using preseining. And then I talked to local fishermen that they told me during these 2 years, they earn 50% more money because they can catch more fish. However, after they catch too many, then the system collapses again. So at the same time, where we can see the report from news that there were many illegal trawling activities in the area, and these are the prosecution figure from the court. From the local fishermen, we know that the actual number will be far higher than this prosecution number. And then on the western side, we couldn't see full swing of recovery because there are many construction work going on, and the fish will run away from these construction sites due to the noise disturbance and also the construction vessel movement. In summary, so we found that just after 2.5 years, the benthic macroinfauna actually recover really well, okay? However, the recovery for the mollusks, crustacean, and fish in the seabed was spatial dependent. So we see a very nice recovery in the western water, but we couldn't see any recovery in the southern water. And then in the eastern water, only partial, okay? So if we want to see better improvement, then we should try to improve the water quality in eastern water, reduce the harmful algal bloom, the wet tide, and also minimize the hypoxic event. Then the mollusks can survive in the future, okay? Then we can see in the southern water, there were increased fishing effort that leading to collapse of the fishery resources again. So it is important to consider other concurrent measures. For example, ban of fishing during some seasons, a fishing moratorium, just like what the China government did right now. And also we should have more fishery protection areas. AFCD now is considering to make the port shelter and also Tolo Channel as a fishery protection areas. We also think that we should control the gears and also the fish size being collected, just like other countries. Of course, we should enhance the enforcement effort to stop all the illegal trawling activities in Hong Kong. Finally, if possible, we should minimize marine construction work, okay? Now I will move to the part 3. The final part is about the, just one more slide about the conclusion. Why this study is important? Because this is the second study in the world to look at the thaw ban effect in tropical region, okay? So in the whole world, there were only 71 studies, including ours. So then you can imagine this is a really rare case, rare examples in the tropical region. Then we saw very good examples to the world. Then we can see rapid recovery of the benthic ecosystem just after 2.5 years of the thaw ban in tropical Hong Kong. When we compare our result with documented data, so these 2.5 years falling into range between 1.9 to 6.4 years. But we believe our system, ecosystem located in the tropics, we should expect a quicker recovery due to the temperature. In conclusion, our results are highly encouraging and supportive to our government chop ban policy, which can effectively improve marine biodiversity and enhance fishery resources. We hope that other countries in the tropics will join us to prohibit destructive trawling activities that will allow recovery of the ecosystems. Okay, now I stop here for the chop ban study. Now move on to my view about this Seaspiracy documentary. On one hand, this documentary is good to raise awareness of the problems in our ocean. However, I think some of the points being exaggerated somehow. In the documentary, it ends with a conclusion that everyone should stop eating fish. That is the solution, and then we should become a vegetarian. But we look at this issue comprehensively, then you will realize that not eating fish would not be the solution to the problem. First, apart from overfishing, our ocean and the biodiversity actually are facing to other stress or other threats, including habitat loss. We have many reclamation projects to turn the natural habitat into artificial concrete seawall. At the same time, we have lots of pollution issue in coastal environments due to increased population size in the coastal cities. Then we also have problems like bioinvasion, the introduction of exotic species who take over the habitat of the native species. And some predator actually will kill the native organism as well. Finally, we are facing a climate change like global warming, then we can see a shift of species diversity due to the global warming. More importantly, we should also look at the livelihood of people from the fishery agriculture organization, Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO from United Nations. We know that about 120 million people are dependent on fish for all or part of their incomes, okay? Their livelihood really dependent on fish and fisheries. And then on top of this, based on the estimation from WWF, we know that 3 billion people in the world rely on seafood, okay? No matter wild caught or farm seafood as the primary protein source. In the documentary, it gave people or portrayed the picture that the whole world is suffering. All the fishing grounds are unsustainable. That's actually not true. Based on the United Nations figure, only 1/3 of the fishing grounds are unsustainable currently. So we still have 2/3 are quite healthy. Many fishing grounds actually operate really well with a fixed quota system. For example, I used to work in Iceland. They have really, really good fishery management. All the fishermen follow the guide, follow the rule. They only target to the species, they have the quota. They will aim for biggest one, the small one, they will return to the sea so that they respect the ocean. They really believe that this is the only way they can fish the ocean forever to sustain the economy. Then if you go to the wet market now, most of the fish product or seafood product actually farmed, okay? Majority of them, over 80, even 90% are farmed product. However, for farming, we have to be careful because when people farm the carnivorous fish, they also feed them with other fish through the fish meal, which will be are used to make the pellet for the fish food. Okay, so but instead of farming carnivorous fish, we can farm the bivalve. We don't need to feed them because they're filter feeder. They can eat the microscopic algae from the sea. And also some gastropod, they are scavenger. They will feed on any dead tissues in the seabed. We can also farm the herbivores or omnivore fish with plant material. So they are more sustainable in terms of production of protein. So my conclusion is we should consume mainly the sustainable species, okay? But we should consume less those unsustainable ones. So we always need to consider not just environment in sustainable development, we also need to consider people's livelihood and also economic development as a whole. So maybe I stop here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. That was super insightful. It was a really nice study and all the data that you showed, and also how the recovery has happened, but also how it didn't happen due to other reasons. I really enjoyed that. And you have actually already responded to some of the questions that I had prepared for you. But I do still have one question, and I'd like to encourage others in the audience. If you have any questions, feel free to post it so that we can ask Professor Leung before we conclude. But I'd like to know what is the outlook for the fisheries in Hong Kong. So based on what we have researched or what we know, most of the fishing that happens in Hong Kong, or most of the seafood and then fish that is caught on Hong Kong is actually exported still. It's not consumed even locally. But what is the outlook actually for the fisheries in Hong Kong? Based on the ban, but you mentioned that there's lots of things happening besides the trawling. How does it look like for the local species, and do you think it's going to further improve? Do you have any plans to conduct further studies on that?
So we have received funding, $1.2 million from EPD to repeat the benefit fauna study in June, just next month. So we are excited about this because we will expect further improvement of the benefit ecosystem. So for your questions about the future of Hong Kong fishery resources, we are quite optimistic about this. Since the government, AFCD, has done a great job, I think the trawl ban policy is really nice, leading to recovery of the ecosystem. And then we can see the government already implement more marine parks. Like last 2 years, we have the Bathurst Islands Marine Park and also Southwest Lantau Islands Marine Park. In the next 2 years, we will see the Southern Lantau Marine Parks going to implement. And also in the future, we will see the third runway, just north of the third runway, there will be a massive marine parks to be implemented. At the same time, the government also look into possibility to make the total harbor, total channel, as well as port shelter as the fishery protection areas. If all these measures going to be implemented in future, we will see further improvement. However, as I said before, we do see we still need to regulate the legal fisheries activities. If you don't control how much they harvest, there will be a risk that they still can over-harvest, okay? That means all your hard work will be jeopardized, okay? So somehow the government may need to make use of science to come up with a sustainable yield concept. So how much can be taken away without long-term negative effects to the ecosystem is the key, okay? But in Hong Kong, very complicated than other European countries or North America. Those areas, they will control or manage just one species at a time. But in Hong Kong, the fishery is a multi-species fishery, and we have a migrant. The fish migrate into our water seasonally. So they're a dynamic system. It's quite hard to work out how much we can catch them. So this is not an easy problem to resolve. So come back to the consumer level in terms of the expectation in the future. Right now, the local production of wild caught fishery only sustain or support less than 10% of our overall consumption in Hong Kong. That means 90% actually we rely on the imported seafood or freshwater fish product, most of them from mainland China. So this is a global trend. Just like in the past, people do hunting to gather wild animals to feed their families, but they realize that it's not sustainable. Instead, they will farm the fish and cows in their yard so that they can have a sustainable supply of meat, okay? So this is our future for the human society. Our future will highly dependent on farming. This is will be already happening. So then how can we make this farming more sustainable? As I said before, we should focus on those sustainable species like bivalve, the shellfish, and also scavenging gasopod, and also some omnivores or herbivores fish species. I think that China did a good job in freshwater fish farming, like the crab and different type of crab. They just feed them with vegetation, some plants, and then supplement with some invertebrate. Then they go really well. And also they are more healthy because they don't need to be dependent on the fish meal from other fish. Often those fish meal will contain chemicals, pollutants. That is not good for health. So I do see that if we can implement more green farming, then I think the whole supply chain will be very healthy in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. I saw a question in the chat, but it kind of responded to that already. Would you know of any labels that you would recommend, say when it comes to sustainable fish, such as now you just said this example? Do you know of any labels that you feel are the ones that the consumer could follow, or say the F&B industry when they procure their seafood or their fish?
Let me see if I could open that one. I think sorry, I couldn't find the file. Don't worry. Mm-hmm. There were 5 major certifications company or organization in the world. Okay. And then there was a scientific study to look at the effectiveness in terms of a conservation effort. From that study, it shows that the Seafood Watch is the best one, okay? So Seafood Watch seems they take all the boxes from monitoring, data gathering, and also closer monitoring of the operation of the fishermen. Seems they can really guarantee that the fish they recommend are actually manage and harvest in a sustainable manner. Then, of course, I believe that it is better to have the certification system, but none of them perfect. But we should start somewhere, and then we can improve all this certification system in the long run. But the people also suggest that it would be more effective the local government take the lead to do this kind of certification because they know their water better. They suppose if they have monitoring data, they should know how to manage the resources better. So that is the argument, rather than someone from far away try to manage your water. It seems there may be uncertainties in the data.
How about, just another question that I would have, how about collaborating with universities or people like yourself, for instance, for the local certification? Do you think that could be more transparent?
Maybe it's difficult because our calling as a professor is different from NGO or industry. Our main job is to advance knowledge and also teaching our next generations of students, young people. Then we don't have much time to really run those organizations. Of course, we can help with the monitoring. There are two types of monitorings. One is fishery independent, the other one is fishery dependent. The latter means we will go out to the fishing boat and then work with the fishermen and then monitor what they get, okay? This is a very important to gather real data. But in Hong Kong, we have yet to start in this kind of monitoring. I think as an academic, we can help to develop the standard protocol. For example, it may not possible to count every single fish on the boat, but we can use AI, we take picture, video, and then maybe we can develop some sort of estimation using high technology. Then we can gather those data in a quicker manner. Then that we can do the role like this. But in terms of a long-term operation of those certification organizations, we still need a full-time devoted team to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. We have also a question from Carmen. Carmen, who is asking about which country or city has a good example of green seafood farming, if any?
Oh, that I must say there are many good examples all over the world. For example, in China, there were many good examples in seaweed farming. Seaweed, because the seaweed can actually absorb taking the nutrients to reduce eutrophication. And then the seaweed can be used as diet supplement for other fish like omnivore fish and herbivore fish like the webbie fish. So this is one example. And also the oyster farmings are very essential. The recent study done by Hong Kong University of Science and Technology showing that the oyster farms in the Pearl River Delta play a significant role to control the nutrients and pollution problem. Without them, we will have even worse wet tide in the region. So then farming those oyster, one stone killing two birds. You control eutrophication at the same time you can provide food for human. So those are very good examples. This also applies to those big countries in agriculture, like in Japan, Taiwan, and also many countries in Southeast Asia. However, we still have a destructive practice, like they turn the natural mangrove site into a pond for shrimp culture, and then they pollute the environment. And also farming carnivores is a problem, as I said before. If they use other fish to make the fish powder and then make the feed, that is not sustainable, obviously. So if they can make use of other sustainable source like seaweed, and maybe tofu, those are plant source, and then just add little bit animal supplement materials that may become more sustainable in the future.
Thank you so much. We've got one more question from Betty Choi about the behavior change of fishermen, whether you have observed anything related to the trawling ban, and for example, adoption of other fishing methods, stronger fishing stress at fishing grounds outside Hong Kong, or even abandonment of fishing as living tool.
I think this is a very good question. As I showed you in the satellite data, the fishermen actually increased their fishing effort after the trawl ban. They realized that they can catch bigger fish and also they can catch more, intensify their fishing effort. However, the more the people go out to fish, and then the less fish being collected by them. By 2015-16, the system no longer support all these fishermen. Then we see different behavior. Some of them, of course, they will move to South China Sea rather than fishing in Hong Kong water. But others actually increase their fishing effort by using different gears, including gillnets. But most destructive one is called snake net or snake caging. Okay, so it's talking about say 100 meter to 300 meter long a chain of cage. Okay, and then they don't need to put feet inside the cage. They just let the current just go into the mouth of the cage, and then the animal will get trapped inside those long chain of cage. Why this is no good? Because imagine this few 100 meter of cage, when they pull, they will destroy the seabed, just like trawling. This gear has been banned in mainland China. It's not legal anymore. But somehow Hong Kong, without the effective legislation to stop it, now we can see it increasingly being used in Hong Kong water. That is a big problem we can see, because you can see they will catch all sizes of marine organism. At the same time, they would really damage the seabed. So we have been suggesting the government should make amendment of the fishing ordinance, the law, so that they can ban this kind of unsustainable gears.
That was very interesting. Thank you so much. I think we are done with the questions from the audience, and we also ran out of the time. I would like to really thank you for all the insights. That was fantastic. We're going to follow up with everybody who signed up for the session, with also some other materials, or if you have any other articles or references that our audience could read related to your study and to trawling, then we would be happy to distribute it as well. So I would like to thank you very much for all your time, Professor Leung, and I'll hope to have you again with us, perhaps for the update of your upcoming study in June.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.